I work for a commercial cleaning company who specializes in cleaning run-down, abandoned buildings and getting them ready for refurbishment. We were hired to clean out an old hospital that had been abandoned for some odd 20 years. My team, of which there were 3 of us, was assigned to the behavioral unit, or more simply, the psych ward. While I was clearing out rooms of dusty, old linens and mattress pads, I found an old marble journal and tucked under one of the pads. Now I opened it up and flipped through quickly and saw that it was about half filled with journal entries. I thought it was pretty cool, so I slid it into my back pocket so I could read later, and I went back to work. I totally forgot about it until I got into the car to drive home. When I got home, I decided to read it, and what I found inside was terrifying, mostly because of the similarities between what was in this journal and what we had cleaned up earlier today. Now I'll go over the connections I found between the journal and what I saw later today. But before that, let me share the story. Now I'm going to try and stay as true as possible to the writing. And so, let's get started. Day 1, 12 p.m. The ER nurse lied to me. She said I could leave after 3 days. The doctor here said she decides when I leave. She said I won't be out in 3 days. I don't want to be here. I don't belong here. Day 2, 11 a.m. I've been here 24 hours. I don't want to be here. I don't belong here. They do a patient check every 15 minutes. If you're in your room, they knock loudly on the door. They don't care about the time. I can't sleep. They gave me my meds tonight, and they say they have mood stabilizers in them. I miss Thea. I miss my bed. I miss my world. It's been 42 hours, and I'm feeling a little better. I broke down last night, but I played some Monopoly earlier today, and it was fun. After I broke down, I was given meds to calm me down. I actually laughed for the first time since coming here. Day 5. I'm okay. I'll be okay. Day 7. It's time to go home. They won't let me leave. I don't know why. I ask and they ignore me. I just want to go home. Day 10. There was a huge boom from outside. None of the nurses reacted. They just carried on like normal. All I can see out the windows is black smoke. Day 14. Things are starting to get a little weird. We found a nurse in the hallway this morning. He was dead. We've been seeing less and less each day, but since we found him, we haven't seen anyone else. Day 27. There hasn't been a single nurse or doctor, or security, or anyone at all, since we found the nurse in the hallway. The door knocking hasn't stopped, though. Every 15 minutes, if a room door is closed, it will knock. The food still shows up, and even the meds still show up in the medicine window. Day 28. Gerald tried to jump through the window at the nurse's station. Something we couldn't see stopped him and drug him back out. He was dragged all the way down the hallway to the quiet room. We hesitantly followed and watched as he was hauled up onto the slab bed. We watched the straps wrap themselves around him and tie him down. Then the door to the room slammed shut. That was this morning. It's almost lights out now. We can still hear him screaming. And poor guy. I guess security is still here. Day 32. It's been over a month now. We put the body of the nurse in Gerald's room, since he doesn't need it anymore. And Gerald is still strapped down in the quiet room, still screaming. I don't know how, though. Now the window is just smoke. Large, rolling, jet black columns of smoke painting the sky in a large swath of one color. And we're still fed. We don't know where it comes from, but the food cart always shows up at the end of the hallway and wheels itself down to us. Day unknown. It's been a while. A lot has happened. A lot of the lights have stopped working, but the knocking never stops. Some of the windows have cracks in them. Don't know how. None of us could even scratch them. There is no more outside. It's just black. The smoke took over the sky, a couple weeks ago? I'm not really sure about time. I haven't seen natural light since the smoke. We only know days because the lights, what few we have left, dim for a bit every few hours or so. The water stopped getting hot a few days ago. With the lights, the windows, and now the water, it's almost like this place is dying. Gerald stopped screaming eventually, still strapped down. We can still see him move from time to time, so he has to be alive. Don't know how he survives though, but I do know that none of us want to piss off whatever thing he did. Day unknown. We have to get out of here. Doris went into her room, and the door closed behind her. It wouldn't open. Something unseen dragged her to her bed and held her there. We watched as the bed then made itself with her in it. That wouldn't have been that bad, except when it was done, Doris was just a red smear between the sheets and the bed. There wasn't even a bulge where her body was. She was just gone. The door has stayed closed ever since. No one is brave enough to go into their rooms now. We're all just staying in the day room. A few days later, I lost this book for a bit. It's not that strange. Stuff sometimes goes missing here. We just assumed that the housekeepers got it. The strange part is that I found it in Gerald's room, next to the body of the nurse. Now just a semi-wet pile of meat and bones. No idea why that room won't clean itself. We've lost a couple of other folks to housekeeping. And that's what we call what happened to Doris. Maybe we'll try and look in Gerald's room for more stuff we lost. Day after last entry. It was a bad idea. The nurse wasn't dead. I don't know how it could be, but it was literally just a pile of meat and bones. And yet, we were in Gerald's room, looking for lost stuff. Ron bumped into the nurse's body, and it jumped at him. It dug its bone and fingers into his neck. No wet squelching noise accompanying its every movement. Ron's strangled, gurgled scream quickly stopped. And I'm ashamed to say that we ran. We left him there, with the nurse thing still digging away at his neck, and we closed the barricade door. And it's been a few days, and I can still hear the nurse thing moving around in Gerald's room. Every now and then we hear a wet slap against the door. And the flies are terrible. Clark got taken by housekeeping. The window broke out of nowhere, and it just shattered. Some smoke came in, just a little though, like a creeping miasma. It slithered its way across the ceiling, and just sat there. We used a table to block the window and keep any more smoke from getting in. Now, we're just watching it. Day unknown. Who even cares anymore? We need to leave. Jenny decided to touch the smoke. Nick grabbed her like a snake. A thin trail came out and coiled itself around her outstretched arm and down her body, and it dragged her into itself. It's unthinkable how such little smoke consumed someone whole. I say consumed because that's what it did. It ate her, not all at once, and not quickly. We tried to save her, tried to drag her back down to us. Even with all of us pulling at her, we couldn't get her to budge. And I think I heard something of hers pop or break or something when we were pulling, but we couldn't save her. So we had to watch. We had to watch as it slowly pulled her into itself. There was no noise, except for Jenny's screeches and screams, but it did eat her, and eventually, and I don't think I will ever forget her screams. And we stay away from it now, and it stays on the ceiling, moving around but never comes down. We're now living in fear of yet another unexplainable thing. Day unknown. It's been too long. The nurse, no idea. Was he ever dead? Was he even human? Gerald, not dead somehow, still strapped down. Doris lost to housekeeping. Aspen and Donald, both also lost to housekeeping. Ron was lost to the nurse thing. Jenny and Danielle were both lost to the smoke. Day unknown, and we're leaving. We've lost too many people just to be sitting here trying to survive. We'll unblock the window and hop out. There's a small landing with an access hatch about half a story below. I'm leaving this book here as a way to ensure we are not forgotten. And if you find this, I didn't live to come back for it. Goodbye. This journal was found in the room of a mental patient who jumped out of his own window to his death. And I came back. I didn't write that. I didn't know who did, but it wasn't me. I found the journal right where I left it. And it's just me now. We didn't even make it out of the hospital. And I came back to my room because I'd rather die here, where I'm at least taken care of. We were exploring the hospital for about a week, and I would say, and this place hasn't changed much. The black smoke is still there, and it moves around the ceiling, following me. And I feel like it's watching me, like a predator watching its prey, not actively hunting, but just waiting for any little slip-up so it can bag itself an easy meal. It won't be from me. And I guess I should explain what happened and how everyone died. When we left, there were 6 of us. Me, Jewel, Richard, Alberto, Gwen, and Ray. I don't know what we expected to find when we left, but there was no way for us to guess what we had saw. Narration note. The entire next page is fully scribbled out, and then the journal continues as follows. I just woke up from a nap. Something more is going on. And I took a nap after writing that last page. When I woke up, and I saw it was completely scribbled out. And I didn't do that. And I guess something didn't like what I had to say. And I can't remember what I wrote yesterday. Honestly, I can't remember most of yesterday. And this place hurts to be in. It hurts to think about. It just hurts. Good news, though. The food still shows up. And it's been 2 days. And I guess I'll try again to write down what happened when I left. And outside the window was a small drop down to an access hatch. We quickly filed out and fell down. I couldn't help but notice no more smoke made its way through the window. Even now, sitting here, writing this, and I don't have the window blocked. And it doesn't make much of a difference, if I'm honest. There is no weather, no wind, and everything is still. I don't hear any animals or bugs. No cars, no people, nothing. Just silence. The world is empty. Back to what happened. We hopped down to the access hatch. We managed to open it and drop down into the floor below. I would tell you what floor number, but I honestly don't know. When we hopped down, we were in a hallway, long and semi-lit. And I guess the rest of the hospital was falling apart, just like our unit. And half of the lights were either flickering dimly, or just plain out. Still enough light to see what we were doing, though. And the hallway had elevators on one side, and a few rooms on the other. The rooms were labeled radiology, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Throughout the entire hall was a low humming and beeping, the sound of medical equipment left on. Being all too familiar with the house cleaning, we didn't dare go into any of the rooms. Gwen wanted to take the elevator, but the rest of us said no. There's no telling what horror that would have led to. Once we got our bearings, we chose a direction and started walking. We could barely see the floor, and I guess that's why we didn't notice at first. When we did notice, we were too terrified to move. We'd been walking maybe 10 minutes. The hallway just went on, and every now and then we would pass a sign with an arrow and the word visitation on it, pointing the way we were going. And occasionally we would come to a large intersection with multiple hallways leading off. And it was one of these intersections we noticed what was around all of us. All over the walls were dark stains, the color of dried blood, and everywhere on the floor, we found wet piles of rotting meat and bone, like our nurse thing. And it's amazing how we didn't smell it at first, but once we noticed, and it was all we could smell. And it was horrible. And just thinking about it makes me want to puke even now. I had to go throw up. I caught a whiff of the smell, and I don't want to think about where it came from. And Richard and Jewel, we were stood in a hallway intersection, surrounded by potential monsters. We had no idea how long these things could last. Hell, they were literally half rotted. Once we found our nerves, we decided to move on. And it's honestly a miracle we hadn't bumped into a pile before then. Our luck couldn't last forever, though. And in the dark confines of a particularly tight hallway, Richard lost his balance and ended up stepping onto a pile of meat. It instantly rose up and swallowed him, more an amorphous blob of meat and bone than anything that would have resembled human form. His scream was quick, but loud enough to wake the dead. Unfortunately, I don't say that as an expression, and apparently noise sets them off. And 2 more meat blobs suddenly launched themselves at the closest person, and Jewel was gone in an instant, the blobs fully enclosing her before she could even scream. Richard was a bit slower. We watched as whatever bones the blob had forced their way into and through him. A long bone through his neck, what looked like maybe fingers digging into his gut, a couple of ribs on his thigh. On and on, we watched in horror for what felt like hours, too scared to move. When he finally had stopped moving, we managed to collect our senses and run. And Gwen. A few days later, we had moved a few floors down via the staircase. We were never able to take just one the entire way. There was always a blockage, forcing us into the hospital proper. And through more halls and rooms, we weren't sure we would make it out. Gwen was leading us through a hall, and she took a turn, and all we heard was the faintest squeak, and then nothing. We waited around the corner for a while, before carefully peeking our heads out. And about a foot from where the wall turns was a massive wall of black smoke, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. There was no way through it. Gwen must have walked right into it, gone before she even realized it. And poor girl. Ray had the worst fate of anyone, except maybe Gerald. Ray was leading the remains of our group, just Alberto, myself, and Ray, through the kitchen. And this was about a day after Gwen. And as we were walking through the kitchen, past stoves and burners of rotten food, Ray saw something on the counter. I still don't know what, and he reached for it. His hand was cut in half. all 4 fingers gone at the knuckle. Next, the skin on his arm was peeled off like the skin of a fish. He watched his arm get sliced into small sections, unable to move. Alberto and I tried pulling him away, but we couldn't. And after his arm, Ray was haphazardly thrown onto the counter, and the rest of his body was cut up, prepared like meat at a butcher shop. And I saw a few pieces get flung into the pot on the stove. And Alberto and I ran away, while the cooks went to work on the rest of Ray. And that's why when I got back here, I skipped my meals for a while, just in case. Alberto was just unlucky. And after what happened to Ray, we decided just to go back to our unit. This was all too much. Alberto and I quickly backtracked. A few days later, we found a stairwell that said, to BHU/Psych. We were almost back. Running up the stairs, Alberto didn't notice a blob on the next step up. He stepped right on it, and of course, it launched itself at him. It ended up tackling Alberto over the railing and down into the empty central column of the stairwell. They fell what must have been 10 stories, and of course, we shouldn't have been up that high. I watched them tumble down, the blob ripping chunks out of Alberto, and then I noticed what was at the bottom. A rolling, bubbling, almost boiling pool of black smoke. All the way down. Alberto and the blob were plummeting towards it. Alberto fell in quietly. The meat blob fell in, and everything was the opposite of silence. How I got back. I guess these things don't like each other. When the meat blob fell into the black smoke, at first there was a blinding light. I can't describe the color. It was beyond white. And that's all that comes to my mind when I try to recall what it looked like. Beyond white is the best I can do. With the light came the noise, deafening, and I was lucky to open my eyes quickly enough to see the black smoke rocketing up towards me. And I quickly threw myself back against the wall, and as the black smoke shot up past me and continued on upwards, filling the central column, I admit it took me longer than I'm proud of to regain control of myself. The light, the noise, the powerful wind from the rush of smoke, and it was almost too much. And I felt the smoke glaring at me, and it was angry. It wanted to eat, but it was hurt. And if I was more of an action hero, maybe I would do something with that information. But I'm not. So I ran. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could. I ran through the door marking floor 3. I ran through the halls, following the signs to the behavioral health unit, thinking whatever power above that these doors were unlocked. I crashed through the twin doors leading back to where it all started. I collapsed onto the floor, finally feeling some semblance of safety. I don't know how long I was out for. I only realized after I woke up, and all the doors that were unlocked, they all locked behind me as I ran. Now I'm stuck here again. And it's been a few days. I'm alone. Gerald is still here, of course. And he's still strapped down. He's little more than literal skin and bones now. But he's still moving. The water is still cold. The window is still broken. And the smoke still follows me. The food still rolls down the hall towards me. And I did learn something through all of this, though. The realization of false hope is more damaging than no hope at all. So for now just live here, with no hope of getting out. And I'll be okay. And that's the whole thing. Pretty creepy if you ask me. While I was cleaning up earlier today, I noticed the ceiling was smudged with a lot of black stuff. Windows were cracked, with one leading to an access hatch that was broken open. In the solitary hold rooms, and I guess what the writer called the quiet rooms, there was one bed with its straps tied down. Nothing on the bed, though. A few of the rooms had linens that were completely stained with something. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what. Walking through the hospital, I also noticed a lot of stains on the floors. I can't say for certain, but I've had to clean up dead bodies before, and the stains in the hospital looked exactly like the kind of stains a body leaves when it sits and rots for a long time. And after reading that and comparing what happened to the journal to the kind of mess that I found, I'm honestly considering calling out tomorrow. Maybe, just maybe, even just calling out for however long it takes to finish cleaning that damned hospital